Hello and welcome back, and can I let you into a little secret? Do you know there are some people that couldn't give a flying fiddlesticks about NAS? I know, right? Some people don't even go out of their way to make hundreds of videos about the subject. But do you know what? Those people, those very people, are exactly who UGREEN are trying to target with this. This is the new DH2300, a value series NAS 2-bay that is trying to challenge those users that go, I've backed it up onto Google, and then carry on with their lives. It is a tough demographic to crack. Those are users that do not want to lay out hundreds of dollars on day one. They are users that want convenience, they are users that want simplicity, and they are users that want setup, forget, and never have to think about data. But even then, those cloud platforms, because of integration of things like AI services that no one wanted, the enshittification of those platforms barring certain features of that pro membership and more, is pushing users off the cloud and onto bare metal. This is plastic, by the way. And that's what this device, knocking around for about 200 nicker, is trying to target, to get those users that are looking at how much they spend a year and get something bare metal. This isn't even the first value series device that UGREEN have launched. We reviewed this earlier this year. This is the DH4300. This is a 4-bay version. Now, you would think, I did at least, that these are largely the same device with 2 drives and 4 drives. It's actually differences between them above and beyond that. And in this video, we're not only going to talk about just what the value proposition that the DH2300 offers to you, but ultimately what it can do, what it can't do, and whether it deserves your money and your data. But for the slightly more technically nous and you want to hear the vital statistics, this device arrives with an ARM-based processor. It's a 64-bit ARM processor, but I will say it is a slight change from that in the 4-bay device. It's the same RK chip family. It's the RK3576, but it's not actually an 8-core chip. It is 2 4-core chips, an A72 processor and an A53 processor at 2.2 gigahertz. Alongside that with Mali graphics on board, that's the G52. So again, it's got graphical manipulation there inside, we'll get onto that later on, and AI processors for those that care at 6 tera operations per second with an on-board NPU. Now, the only reason I highlight about the whole core thing, the fact that it's actually 2 processors, I wish UGREEN were a little bit more transparent about that, because their messaging on their official page is a little bit all over the place when they talk about, it's an 8-core processor, but it's actually 2 4-core. And that's not a huge distinction, but I do think it's a bit of marketing buzz that I think could stand to be a little clearer. Alongside that, the device arrives with 4 gig of LPDDR4 memory. It is fixed, you can't upgrade it, but 4 gig and 2 4-core or an 8-core processor inside at this price point. However, that hardware does compare very well when you favour the QNAP offering, their ARM powered TS233 value series NAS, and the Solidity DS223 and 223J, both of which have got an older architecture to compare against, and it's just more hardware under the bonnet on the UGREEN there. Also, when we get to the ports and connections, you'll see some improvements there as well. Drive injection is done vertically inside the chassis. It's a magnetic plastic top ventilated panel, and each of the trays, I will say, do feel plastic as all hell, but they do load in. You do have to screw your drives inside. But I've got 2 drives and they go directly into SATA connectors there based inside. No loose cables, nothing like that. And there's a single base operating fan, and around the edge of the system is a ton of ventilation. Again, I couldn't find much indication about hot swapping support on this. You technically can hot swap because you just got to remove it, but it's not really the conventional trays inside. I hot swapped, it worked, but again, until I see very, very clear messaging on the official pages, I'm reluctant to say the hot swapping is a feature on this NAS. Alongside those 2 bays of storage, there's also an internal storage area for the operating system UGOS. It's a 32 gig eMMC storage area, so you're not getting M.2 storage like some of the bigger, more powerful systems there, but also that in combination with that ARM-based processor all add up to a system that you can't really conventionally install a third-party operating system like TrueNAS, Unraid, etc. There are operating systems like OpenMedia Vault and a few others that have been architecturally designed to run on both x86 and 64-bit ARM processors, and we'll touch on that later on. There is an element of KVM here, but still, I saw nothing on the official documentation or really in terms of the architecture and getting into BIOS, really any means to put a third-party operating system smoothly on this. So when you're buying this, Don't buy this in the same way that you've looked at other UGREEN systems and gone, I'm just going to put TrueNAS on that. I wouldn't really say that is an option on this. Changing tack and talking about ports and connectivity, that is one area that really left me dumbfounded on this new device. This is the 4-bay here. It arrives with almost the same connections, but with one vital, frankly, downsided connection. We have got LEDs there on the front. We've got 3 USB 3 ports there, a USB Type-C on the front, and a couple of them there on the rear. All 5 gig USB, by the way, not a huge surprise, given its ARM architecture there. And we've got an HDMI out. That is a 4K 60 frames per second HDMI out, which can be taken advantage of by the multimedia applications inside and assigned to containers as well. But it's only 1 gig in 2025, guys. I get it. It's cheap. I get it. It's a 2-bay. I get it. You know, you've got to make efficiencies. But the 4-bay has 2.5 gig, and yes, this one rocks around for around a 300 to 400 nicker marks. There is a big scale up in price, but even on a 2-bay in a RAID 1, that 1 gig's not going to be enough. It's going to be completely oversaturated by the drives. And I'm just really disappointed by having 1 gig out the gate. I would have just assumed it was 2.5 gig. I think many users would. So that really, for me, and I know the target user this is gearing towards, we said it in the introduction, shouldn't really care about 2.5 gig, but I just think the base level standard and the fact that these newer ARM 64-bit architecture CPUs support 2.5 gig means this was a choice by the brand, and it's a choice I wanted to highlight because really there isn't much about this system I don't like. That's really it. You're not going to hear a lot of slack from me on the hardware value point, but I really wanted to highlight that. I'm not even going to talk about the lack of failover here, because realistically, although I would have liked to have seen 2 LAN ports there, I understand why on a value series device they don't do that, but still, 1 gig for me, and for many of you, is going to be a deal breaker. Next up, let's talk about noise, let's talk about power utilization, and let's talk about thermals. Real quick, when it comes to power, it's worth keeping in mind this arrives with an external barrel connected 50 watt PSU straight into the wall. That's the one there. We'll come back to power in just a moment, but noise. Let's talk about noise, because again, the drives you choose to use, that will affect the amount of noise being generated by this device in idle and in terms of utilization and read and write. It is plastic here, so there's less of an application than you would find in a metal chassis, but still it doesn't reduce it completely. And the vertical design means that a lot of the noise and resonance is happening here in the lower portion of the device. Also, UGOS has fan control as well. So we went ahead and ran 4 different operational scenarios to manage the noise there. The first test we did was with the system in full idle, so that it was set up, but the drives were in idle and the fan was set to the lowest RPM in the software. We saw a noise level of around 31 to 32 dBA. And again, the drives we were utilizing inside were 4TB Seagate Iron Wolf drives. Just double checking they're still inside there. Now, after that, we went ahead with the fan set to auto. That is the drives effectively responding to how the system is being utilized. And we went ahead and arranged read and write activity on those drives. Now, noise level went up to about 33 to 35 dBA with the odd ambient spike locally. Next up, we set the fans back to low, and then from there we went ahead with the low noise and the drives running with read and write activity, and that went up a little bit more to 38 to 41. Remember, the fan isn't just set to like 3 switches, it does gradually ramp up over time, and the fan level being maintained is responsive to the internal sensors. There isn't just a 3-switch system there. Finally, we went with the read and write activity on the drives and the fan set to their maximum operational RPM there. And that went to an RPM of around, a dBA rating of 44 to 45, again with the odd ambient noise spike. So again, when the fans are high, you're going to notice it, but in every other regard, I couldn't hear it. If I had used larger drives, you definitely would have. Let's hear those 4 audio levels side by side without my jammering all over them now. Next up, temperatures. Now, I had the system set up for a number of days, but for the temperature testing, I had the device powered down over a weekend and then powered on for 24 hours, with the system being accessed for uploads and for system operations happening once every hour, as well as cloud backups there on the network. So with an hourly access to the system, and that meant roughly 55 minutes of idle and 5 minutes of access over a 24-hour period, the temps and the thermals are actually still pretty impressive. The drive temperatures were around 35 to 37 during downtime periods, and between the access periods, we saw the temperatures between those drives where the motherboard was of around 42 degrees. The base and the surrounding environment was around 34 to 35 degrees, and around the ports and connections, we only saw as little as 32 degrees. Again, we do have low priority and low power consuming connections there, so we didn't expect the heat to be too bad. Overall, the temps and the thermals around weren't too shabby. When the system was in operation, we saw the CPU sit and peak probably around 50 to 60 watts, but of course during high access and low access, those were reflective of the test being conducted. Finally, power consumption, we had those two 4TB Seagate Iron Wolf hard drives inside there, and we went ahead and just measured the two. We went ahead with the idle rating and the access rating. For idle, with those drives inside not being accessed and system not doing anything in particular, CPU utilization sub 5%, we saw power consumption of just 9.5 watts, which is pretty darn good with two mechanical hard drives inside. And again, larger hard drives, more industrial hard drives would have consumed more power by around 4 to 5 watts. But when we had the system set up with CPU utilization around the 50% mark and read and write activity happening with SMB access, we saw the power consumption go up to 12 to 13 watts. Again, very good numbers for an ARM-powered NAS there. And if we were using SATA SSDs, we would have seen a drop of at least 4, perhaps even 5 watts on top of that. Overall, between them, decent enough power numbers for an ARM-powered NAS and a value series NAS. This means low impact in terms of power consumption, low temperature increases there overall, and finally noise. Unless you're going to ramp the fans up or use bigger drives, it's not really going to be that noticeable. But hardware and, its imprint is only going to be half the story. Let's talk about the software that UGOS that this arrives with can and cannot do, and especially what it can and can't do compared with that of the more powerful x86 powered systems. Let's get to the desktop. Now, if you've already used a UGREEN NAS or you've watched some of the other videos that I've done about UGREEN NAS devices, a lot of what I'm going to talk about right now in the software is going to be quite familiar with you. But I do think it's worth highlighting that because this is an ARM-powered CPU NAS here, that arcade chip, there's actually a few small differences, and particularly in terms of services that are available to you. Also, later on, I'm going to go through the mobile application as well. But I just wanted to highlight there at the top of the video, in case you're like, we've already seen this before. I think there are going to be new users that aren't familiar with the UGS platform. But moving forward, here is the desktop of using the desktop client application. I could have chose, if I wanted to go via that LAN connection there at the top, ending in 5.8. And again, in the control panel, you can disable or enable certain kinds of access onto the system. But I'm using the client app to give you some idea about if you want to use the kind of dedicated client tool for this. As you can see, an update has actually arrived during the course of this video. I'm not going to upgrade to it, but I just wanted to include it here just to give you some idea about some of the bells and whistles of things that get changed and the regularity of some of these updates on UGREEN's platform. I would argue in the year and a half that they've been around, they have become something of an established player in the world of entry-level NAS. I think they're still making their bones very, very early on in terms of business, but at least in terms of a consumer, a prosumer, a small home lab, there's a lot to be said for this platform. Now, if we go into the control panel there, we can find out pretty much all of the controls we want. We can go into the user account settings here, create new user groups, individual users if we choose to, and again, you can set rules with regards to security of the passwords. You can create individual users. You can't create a guest account right now, but you can create individual accounts, and those individual users, you can tailor the level of access to different folders, the amount of storage they have got, pretty much their rights and rules in the system, and delegate extra rules and permissions, stick them into individual user groups pretty easily. And again, you can control what they can access and more via those file service controls, and that gives them some level of bespoke file protocol control dedicated to their individual needs. Likewise, you can change the level of system access on the local area network and remote access as well as a tailored portal there to be accessed to make it a little bit more tailored to your own needs in terms of the background and what they can see, as well as changing the ports as well if you choose to. And I'm going to skip a few pages and go straight to security, because alongside auto block for enabling protection of things like DDoS, which will slow down access, I have to say, as well as managing different IPs that you want to block if they're repeatedly putting in the wrong password. On top of that, account security with things like two-factor authentication. And if you want to, and we looked at it earlier on, if you want to use their remote access portal using their own services with UGREEN's remote access link, you can do that. Or you can stick ahead to only local LAN access if you choose to, as well as enabling firewall protocols and being very selective about which ports you want to allow access to via your router and more. All of that being configured and tailored pretty easily there with network local access control. Again, all of that built into the software natively. Now, from there, we can talk a little bit more about the system itself. By security levels of SSH being enabled and TNET, they are switched off by default, something that weirdly, I don't believe I have to say in 2025, there are still some NAS solutions arriving with SSH on by default, or sometimes without even that sodding option available. At least that is available out the gate here. Now, moving away from that, we can go into the system settings for storage. This is a 2-bay, but still nonetheless, those hard drives inside, you can create a RAID 0 or RAID 1 or singular drives if you choose, and you can have regular tests and plans on these drives, as well as taking advantage of Seagate Iron Wolf Health Management if the drive supports it. On top of that, have your bad sector warnings. On top of that, have bespoke rapid plans that can occur over time to test the health of those drives when you need it. Storage creation with regards to creating an individual storage pool and then a volume on top are all pretty straightforward, and you can play around with those settings if you choose to, as well as adapting the RAID repair settings. So for example, if one of your drives fails and you introduce a new drive, you can go ahead and reprioritize that the RAID Rsync there to ensure the drives rebuild the RAID quicker or focus on that read-write performance. The same goes with quick repair that allows you to only build the areas of the drive or rebuild the areas of the drive where data originally lived. And even this storage manager, you can add a whole host of extra bells and whistles and widgets to allow you to assess the system's health over time. Now, moving forward from that, the Application Center has actually got a few more apps over the last year and a half that have been added. We could go into all of them. I'm going to cherry pick a few that stand out for me. So, for example, the new Vault section here allows you to create an encrypted, password protected area of the storage system that can only be accessed by those with the downloadable key or with the password to get in. It's worth highlighting, you can drag and drop into it if you choose and then lock this whenever you see fit. You can always make sure, by the way, that this completely dismounts and is inaccessible in the event of the system rebooting, which is quite handy there. And you can even change the kind of code level there that you're going to be using for that key. And again, you can assign that to individual volumes and lockables as well. On top of that, we can go into things like snapshots for recovery. Snapshots of recovery come into two different forms here. You can take advantage of standard snapshots, or you can go for the versioning explorer that allows you to maintain, I believe, up to 8 versions of any file on the system. Normally folder level, but you've still got snapshots there in the background to allow you to create recovery. Snapshots can be done on a schedule or an ad hoc basis as you see fit, with retention policies settable to your own needs there, and again to the number of days or the amount of snapshots, and a snapshot plan allowing you to assign how regularly you want individual shared areas on the system to have those snapshots for rotatable recovery. Alongside that, you can assign cloud drives. You can actually connect some of your cloud-based services. I've added a few, but they're still a little bit more Eastern than Western, but still nonetheless allowing you to add and bolt on your cloud storage. You can't take advantage of most of your services. It really is just adding it with ease. But that's really it, but it's still nice to have the feature. And again, if you go with administrative mode there, it does allow you to change and adapt some of the other users' connected cloud services if you choose to. Now, from that, you can go to the synchronization and backup section that allows you to create NAS to NAS, NAS to cloud, NAS to USB, folder to folder level synchronization and backups as you see fit. And these can be adapted with different filters very, very easily with synchronization policies that apply to different file types, file sizes, file dates. All of it really, really straightforward. And again, whether it is that you want to go for synchronization or backup, It's kind of all featured in there in whichever one you want to use. And that goes all the way down, by the way, to some of the system administration stuff as well. It's not OS level backups. We are still talking folder to folder, and you can use slightly more open-ended ones such as Rsync, so you don't have to worry about compatibility. But if you do want to use this NAS alongside an existing UGREEN or third-party one, you can still go ahead and do that. It's very tailored and very easy to use. But what are the main differentials between an Intel or AMD x86 powered system and this ARM one is, of course, things like Docker and things like virtualization. Docker you do still have here, but it's worth remembering that you do have that fixed 4 GB memory. That is going to be something of a limitation, bearing in mind, of course, if we look at the resource manager, that I'm doing precious little and I'm already using quite a lot of memory there. Yes, I'm running a lot of services. All of these services are ready and running in the background, but it's still a huge share of memory being used up for those services and not a lot to play with, so you can't upgrade it. So keep that in mind that although Docker is supported here, this architecture means that your glass ceiling is perhaps a little lower. But of course you can run everything from multimedia to home automation via Docker deployed apps very easily, but you don't have access to a virtual machine application. You don't have the option to run an Ubuntu or Windows VM out the gate. That is just not possible here. And also, and I probably mentioned this earlier in the video, because this system runs on that 32 gig eMMC, which is very easy to get around with and write to, even though this is technically a KVM system with the HDMI output, sticking another OS on this is not really going to be possible. So keep that in mind, that this is a software you're kind of going to be locked in with for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule, but not hard and fast ones. And when it comes to accessing your data on the fly, you've of course got file management here, and again creating shared folders or individual user folders can all be done very easily on the fly. You've got everything you're going to need in terms of categorization, in terms of filing, in terms of functionality and sharing. It's all built in here very easily, and alongside the file folder manager there, you can go, if you choose to, into a text editor if you need to. And of course, if you do want to go into multimedia, you have a photo application, you have a music application, and you have a video application that crawls metadata. We'll come to the video one in a moment. But again, creating AI photo recognized photos with tools is available here. Just thanks to that CPU with 6 tera operations per second NPU built on. Facial recognition with people recognition, text recognition for OCR, object recognition, duplicate object recognition. It's all kind of built in there, and although it's going to use a lot more system resource than, you know, an x86 processor, some of those Alder Lake 12 Gen CPU systems in the Plus, Pro and Standard NASync series, there's a lot to like here. And again, sharing files, running live photos is all available there. It's very easy to access. You can get all the ready to go information, and again, whether you want some of that background metadata information, it's all built in there. It's all lovely stuff. Now, for music and audio, this is at its best when you're streaming to third services, and you can play locally if you choose, or choose a local streamable device if you like. It's all built in there with metadata scraping. You've got all the things you're going to need in order to enjoy your audio there. And of course, for the video application there, you can install Plex, you can install Jellyfin, and again, you go into the application center there, you have those options for third-party apps, or using the containerized applications available via Docker, or use their own that only allows you to output via HDMI on this system and the more powerful ones, but also play locally with scrape metadata. We go for the movies there, Little Shop of Horrors. It's all in there. There's the actors, there's our cast, it's all built in. And the test media we can go ahead and just play. For example, Beauty of Taiwan played locally. As you can see, we've played it before. You have the option of changing the file format there, but do keep in mind, of course, not only is it going to be dependent on the licenses on your local client system sometimes, but we are running an ARM CPU where CPU utilization for changing files is going to be a little bit harder to do. And naturally, you've got the bells and whistles of things like UPnP and DLNA to stream multimedia across the network very easily in the most Billy basic way. And then, of course, on top of that, you can use universal search to search the system for files, search it for folders, ultimately using a little bit, but not a huge amount of some of that AI background stuff. Again, most of it is dedicated to multimedia, but still you've got the option to quick search the system. And of course, as mentioned, you can use this or accessing the web browser to do all of this very, very easily. And all of that is made eminently easier when you know that the mobile application gives you pretty much everything we've just described. I'm not going to go through the whole app for you there, but for example, we've got access to our task manager for real-time information, file folder access and synchronization with our local system or connecting to a network drive is there. Control panel, all of the same controls, every single option, everything that you do on the desktop is manageable here, right down to the storage level, I might add. The multimedia, if you want to access some of that stuff that we've just gone through, be it for photos, be it for music, it's all built in there. And the application center even allows you to add those apps and services here directly via the mobile app. The full features of that desktop client app are available to you here in the mobile form. You're not really limited in any way. That goes right the way down, by the way, to the control panel and adding users and removing users, crucially, on the fly if you need to. It is a single app, which I know some people like. There isn't a dedicated photo appliance or a dedicated video appliance. It's all a one doorway system here, but still, there's nothing I can find on the desktop that I can't do here. It's even kind of crazy to me that I can run the container applications as well. How bonkers is that I can go ahead and run container applications via the mobile app? That's something you really wouldn't have put or included in the coverage of even an ARM system around the $200 mark. Fair play to them for that. But let's crack back onto the studio and talk about this system in closing. As a value proposition, you can't really fault this for what it's doing and the price point that it rolls out at. I'm not going to say it's perfect for a start. If you aren't interested in getting an ARM-powered system, if you're looking for something more aggressive or egregious like virtual machine deployment there or real hardware transcoding, this is not really going to be the system for you. And also, that 1 gig network port on the rear does wind me up. But I do know that the audience this is aiming towards, they're not going to care because they're not really thinking about that. And a lot of those users, when they are backing up via cloud access services, whether it is they're going to sync that with the UGREEN system or they're going to be utilizing their own relay and they can use the UGREEN apps and back up remotely, at that point, not on the network, 1 gig is going to be fine because most of them are never going to upload and download remotely on this anywhere near what the 1 gig is going to put out. It's just a shame that on a local area network, you're potentially missing out on 2.5 gig there. But again, all depends on a user's network. That target audience probably won't care. And at that price point, this is still a fantastic offering to move away from cloud services onto this. Just keep that in mind that just for a little bit more spend, you can get a lot more future-proofing in terms of storage and network connectivity here on the table. And of course, there are more egregiously powerful systems in that lineup. How does it compare against Synology and QNAP's offerings? I would say very, very well. I would argue their software is still not as mature as their platforms by any regard, but for those that are just looking for targeted storage, simplified backups and synchronization, and just, to watch a movie, look at their photos and stream a bit of music, this is a great option. And of course, it still supports containers for those that want to go that little bit further. So that's really it. I like it. Is it ideal and perfect? No, but for its target demo, it's pretty good. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. There'll be a written review link below, hopefully live in the next few days. And if you are interested in getting hold of this, and if you have, found this video helpful, please use the links in the description to get hold of your NAS today. Using those links results in a small commission coming here to NAS Compares. It's just me and Eddie doing what we do. And more importantly, it allows you to passively support creators like us without having to donate, without having to spend more, because frankly, the ads don't do the job. And if you have found this video helpful and you want to see more videos like this, it's a passive, no extra support method for you to keep things like this working. Not just us, but other channels too. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.